The telegram fluttered in Josephine Valiant's trembling hands as she read it for the 100th time since its arrival 3 days ago. "Coming home. Wait for me." 4 simple words that had reignited a hope most folks in Willow Creek thought had died years ago. 5 years, to be exact, since Beau Matthews had ridden out of town chasing dreams of gold and fortune in the California territories. Josephine, or Joey, as most called her, stood on the creaking wooden porch of her father's general store, staring out at the dusty main street of the small Wyoming town as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the weathered buildings. It was 1876, and the promise of spring hung in the air, though winter's chill hadn't fully released its grip on the high country. "You're a fool to believe he's really coming back," Meredith Holcomb said, adjusting her bonnet as she climbed the steps to the store. As the banker's wife and self-appointed town gossip, Meredith took particular pleasure in reminding Joey of what everyone considered her greatest folly waiting for a man who'd been gone half a decade. "I received a telegram," Joey replied, tucking the precious paper into her pocket. Meredith's laugh was brittle. "How many telegrams has that man sent over the years, and how many times has he actually shown up? I count 0. She shook her head with exaggerated pity. "Some men are born wanderers, Joey. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can move on with your life." Joey forced a smile. "I'll need 2 pounds of sugar and some coffee if you don't mind wrapping that up for me." Inside the store, Joey's father, Thomas Valiant, gave her a sympathetic look as Meredith followed her in, still talking about suitable bachelors in neighboring towns. At 55, Thomas had the weathered appearance of someone who'd faced the harsh frontier life head-on, but his eyes remained kind beneath his silver-streaked hair. "That'll be 85 cents, Mrs. Holcomb," he said, interrupting Meredith's monologue about her nephew in Cheyenne. After Meredith left with her purchases, Thomas turned to Joey. "You don't have to let them get to you, darling." "I know, Pa." Joey busied herself organizing a display of canned goods. "But sometimes I wonder if they're right. Am I a fool?" Thomas crossed the worn plank floor and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hope isn't foolish, Joey. It's what keeps us going out here." That evening, as Joey sat on her bed in the modest room above the store, she pulled out a small wooden box from beneath her mattress. Inside were all of Beau's letters, 12 in total over 5 years. The first few had come frequently, filled with excitement about the gold fields. Then they'd grown sparse and sometimes despondent as fortune proved elusive. The last letter had arrived almost 18 months ago. She read it again by the flickering lamplight, tracing her fingers over his handwriting. "I know I've been gone too long. I know the promises I made when I left seem hollow now. But Joey, not a day goes by that I don't think about coming home to you. I just need to make good first." A man needs something to offer the woman he loves. Joey had responded as she always did, telling him she didn't need riches, just him. But after that letter, silence had fallen, until the telegram 3 days ago. She blew out her lamp and lay in the darkness, listening to the distant howl of a coyote. "I'll wait," she whispered. "I'll always wait." The next morning dawned clear and cold. Joey rose early to help her father open the store. The bell above the door jingled as Sheriff Wade Harrison entered, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. "Morning, Thomas, Joey," he nodded. "Fine day." "What can we help you with, Sheriff?" Thomas asked, measuring out coffee beans for the morning's first pot. "Just passing along news." Stage was delayed by a washout on the North Road. "Won't be in until tomorrow at the earliest." His eyes flicked to Joey. "Heard you were expecting someone." Joey felt heat rise to her cheeks. Of course everyone knew about the telegram. In a town of 400 souls, little remained private for long. "Thank you for letting me know," she replied evenly. The sheriff lingered, turning his hat in his hands. "Joey, I've been meaning to ask if you might consider joining me for supper at the hotel dining room this Friday." Before Joey could respond, the door swung open again and Lily Turner, the blacksmith's daughter and Joey's closest friend, burst in. "Joey, did you hear? Riders coming from the south, 3 of them, and one of them's on a palomino. Joey's heart leapt. Beau had always ridden a Palomino. Sheriff Harrison frowned. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but Joey was already untying her apron. "Pa, I'm just going to." Thomas waved her on. "Go." Joey raced down the main street, her boots kicking up dust, Lily close behind. Several townsfolk had already gathered at the south end, shading their eyes against the morning sun as they peered at the approaching riders. "Can you make them out?" Joey asked Caleb Turner, Lily's father, who stood with his arms crossed over his blacksmith's apron. "Can't say for certain," he replied gruffly. The waiting was agony. As the riders drew closer, Joey could see that the lead rider wasn't Beau. He was older with a gray streaked beard. The second rider was younger but clearly not Beau either. Her gaze fixed on the third rider, the one on the Palomino, who seemed to be slumped in the saddle. "Something's not right," Caleb muttered, and started walking toward the approaching trio. The riders came to a stop at the edge of town. Now Joey could see that the third rider was indeed hurt, with a bandage wrapped around his head and another around his torso. His face was partially obscured by several days' growth of beard, and his clothes were travel-worn and bloodied. "We need a doctor," the older rider called out. "My friend's been shot." "What happened?" Sheriff Harrison asked, stepping forward. "Ambush," the older man replied. "2 days back near Green River, bunch of outlaws hit our camp." As they spoke, the injured man raised his head and Joey's breath caught. Despite the dirt and blood, despite the years that had passed, she would know those eyes anywhere. "Beau," she whispered. His gaze found hers across the distance, and the faintest smile touched his cracked lips. "Joey," he said, his voice a rasp, and then he slid from the saddle. Joey rushed forward as several men caught Beau before he hit the ground. "Get him to Doc Wilson's," Sheriff Harrison ordered, and 2 men gently carried Beau's limp form toward the doctor's house at the end of the street. "Are you Joey?" the older rider asked, dismounting stiffly. She nodded, tears threatening. "He talked about you, all the way here, even with the fever, said he had to get home to you." The man extended a weathered hand. "Frank Harmon, your man there saved my life during that ambush." Joey shook his hand mechanically, her mind racing with fear for Beau. "How bad is he?" "Took a bullet in his side. We dug it out best we could, but it's festered something awful. Been burning with fever since yesterday." "I need to go to him," Joey said, already turning toward the doctor's house. "Joey," her father called, having joined the gathering. "Let the doctor work first." The next hours were the longest of Joey's life. She paced outside Doc Wilson's house, occasionally peering through the windows, catching glimpses of the doctor working over Beau's prone form. The third rider, who introduced himself as Carl Winters, told her and the gathering crowd about the ambush, a gang of outlaws who'd attacked their camp, killing 2 others in their party and making off with most of their supplies and money. "Why would they attack you?" Sheriff Harrison asked. Carl and Frank exchanged glances. "They weren't after our gear," Frank said. "They were after what Beau was carrying." "And what was that?" the sheriff pressed. Frank looked at Joey. "Gold dust and nuggets, quite a haul. Beau struck it rich about 6 months back. Been working his claim since, building up enough to come home proper. Said he had a promise to keep." Joey felt her knees weaken. After all this time, he really had been trying to make his fortune for her. Doc Wilson finally emerged from the house, wiping his hands on a cloth. "He's a strong one," he announced. "Bullet missed anything vital, but the infection's bad. Next 24 hours will tell the tale." "Can I see him?" Joey asked. The doctor nodded. "He's been asking for you, but he needs rest, mind." Beau lay on the doctor's examining table, pale beneath his tan, his breathing labored. When Joey entered, his eyes fluttered open and a weak smile crossed his face. "Told you I was coming home," he whispered. Joey took his hand, careful to avoid the bandages. "You didn't have to get yourself shot to make an entrance." He tried to laugh but winced instead. "The gold," he began. "Hush, that doesn't matter." "It does." His grip tightened on her hand. "It was for you, for us, to build a life." "We can build a life without gold," she said softly. "I never wanted riches, Beau. I just wanted you." The others said I was a fool, he murmured, his eyes closing with exhaustion. Said no woman would wait 5 years. Well, I'm called foolish for hoping, Joey replied, smoothing his hair back from his fevered brow. So I suppose we're well matched. His eyes opened again, focusing on her face with sudden clarity. Your hope is my life, Joey. It's what brought me back. Then he slipped into unconsciousness, his breathing ragged. Doc Wilson ushered Joey out, promising to send for her if there was any change. That night was the longest of Joey's life. She sat in her father's rocking chair by the window, watching the lights in Doc Wilson's house, praying with an intensity that left her exhausted by dawn. When she returned to the doctor's at first light, she found Beau's fever had broken during the night. He's not out of danger, Doc Wilson cautioned, but it's a good sign. Over the next week, Joey spent every moment she could spare from the store at Beau's side. Slowly, color returned to his face and strength to his voice. He told her of his years away, the hardships, the failures, and finally the success when he discovered a rich vein in a claim others had abandoned. I should have come home sooner, he admitted one afternoon, now well enough to sit up in bed. Pride kept me away. I didn't want to return empty-handed. 5 years is a long time to hold onto pride, Joey said, unable to keep the hurt entirely from her voice. Beau reached for her hand. It wasn't just pride, it was fear too, fear that you'd moved on, found someone better. There was no shortage of people telling me I should, Joey said with a wry smile, but you didn't. No, I didn't, she squeezed his hand. I believed you'd come back. The gold's gone, Beau said suddenly. Those outlaws got it all, 5 years of work gone in an instant. We'll manage, Joey assured him, though privately she wondered what this meant for their future. Sheriff Harrison had been investigating the ambush but had little hope of recovering the stolen gold. The outlaws had too much of a head start and too many places to hide in the vast wilderness. As Beau recovered, talk in town turned to what he would do next. Some speculated he'd head back to California once he was well enough. Others suggested he might take up one of the homestead claims outside town. Joey tried not to listen to the gossip, but doubt crept in. Would Beau stay this time, or would the lure of adventure pull him away again? 2 weeks after his arrival, Beau was strong enough to leave the doctor's house. With no place of his own, Thomas Valiant offered him the small room behind the store that had once been used for storage. It's not much, Thomas apologized as he showed Beau the space, but it'll do until you get your bearings. It's more than generous, Beau replied. I can't thank you enough for looking after Joey all these years. Thomas gave him a measuring look. She's all I have left in this world. Her happiness means everything to me. I understand, sir. Do you? Because she's spent 5 years defending you to this entire town, 5 years putting her life on hold. Beau met the older man's gaze steadily. I know I've got a lot to make up for. But if you'll let me, I aim to spend the rest of my life doing just that. Thomas nodded, seemingly satisfied. See that you do. That evening, Joey and Beau sat on the back porch of the store, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson. It was the first time they'd truly been alone since his return. What will you do now? Joey finally asked, the question that had been haunting her. Beau was silent for a long moment. I've been thinking about that, he said at last. I've still got some money, not much, but enough to make a start. Frank mentioned the old Davidson place is for sale. It's run down, but the land is good. You want to be a farmer? Joey couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Beau had always been restless, always seeking the next adventure. He smiled at her expression. I know, not what anyone expected. But I've had my fill of wandering, Joey, of sleeping under strange skies and waking up alone. He took her hand. If these years taught me anything, it's that all the gold in California isn't worth what I left behind here. Hope bloomed in Joey's chest, but she tempered it with caution. The Davidson place would need a lot of work, and farming isn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. He shifted to face her fully. Joey, I know I have no right to ask after making you wait so long, but would you consider starting that farm with me, as my wife? The directness of his proposal took her breath away. For 5 years she'd imagined this moment, dreamed of it on countless lonely nights. Now that it was here, she found herself hesitating. "Beau, I've waited for you for so long, but things can't just go back to how they were before." "We've both changed." "I know that," he said earnestly. "I'm not the same man who left. That man was chasing fantasies. I've learned what really matters. And if times get hard, if the crops fail or cattle prices drop, will you stick it out, or will you hear about some opportunity somewhere else and leave again?" The question hung between them as the last light faded from the sky. In the growing darkness, Beau's expression was difficult to read. "I deserve that," he said finally. "And I can't prove what I'll do in the future except by my actions from here on out." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. "But I can show you this." In his palm lay a small gold nugget, no bigger than a bean. "The outlaws didn't get everything," he explained. "I always kept this one separate from my first find, not worth much, but I carried it as a reminder of what I was working toward." He pressed it into her hand. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just think about it." The following days fell into a routine. Beau helped in the store, proving surprisingly adept at commerce after his years of trading in mining camps. He spoke with the bank about purchasing the Davidson property, worked with Caleb Turner to repair the store's delivery wagon, and gradually reintegrated into the community he'd left behind. Joey watched him with a mixture of hope and lingering caution. The gold nugget he'd given her now hung on a chain around her neck, a constant reminder of his promise, but still she hesitated to give him an answer. "You're being cautious, and that's wise," Lily told her as they walked to church one Sunday morning. "But I see how you look at him, Joey, and how he looks at you like you're the most precious thing he's ever seen." "I'm afraid," Joey admitted. "Not that he doesn't love me, but that love won't be enough to keep him here." "Maybe what he needs is something worth staying for," Lily suggested. "Something more than just a farm." That afternoon, a commotion at the south end of town drew everyone's attention. 3 riders approached, and Sheriff Harrison and his deputy moved to meet them. Joey felt a chill of recognition. One of the men matched the description of the outlaw leader who had ambushed Beau's party. "Get inside," Beau ordered, appearing at her side. "Those are the men who attacked us." "What do they want?" "Nothing good." His jaw was set in a hard line. "Please, Joey, go inside." But she stood her ground, watching as Sheriff Harrison confronted the newcomers. Words were exchanged, too distant to hear, but the tension was visible in every line of the men's bodies. Suddenly, one of the outlaws reached for his gun. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. Shots rang out and the sheriff fell. The outlaws spurred their horses toward the town's main street, guns drawn as people scattered for cover. Beau pushed Joey behind the water trough as bullets splintered the wood around them. "They're looking for me," Beau said grimly. "They think I still have gold." "Sheriff's down," someone shouted. The deputy and several townsmen were returning fire from whatever cover they could find, but the outlaws were pressing forward, using their horses as mobile cover. "I need to help," Beau said. "Stay here." Before Joey could protest, he was moving in a crouch toward the general store where her father was ushering people inside. More shots rang out. A window shattered somewhere down the street. A woman screamed. Joey peered over the water trough in time to see Beau emerge from the store with her father's rifle. He took up position at the corner of the building and fired, hitting one of the outlaws in the shoulder. The man fell from his horse, cursing. The outlaw leader spotted Beau and shouted something to his remaining companion. They split up, trying to flank the defensive positions the townspeople had established. Joey realized with horror that the leader was circling around behind where Beau was positioned. Without thinking, Joey darted from her hiding place toward the store. She had to warn him. She was halfway there when the outlaw leader rounded the corner, his gun aimed at Beau's back. "Beau, behind you," she screamed. Beau whirled as the outlaw fired. Joey saw Beau stagger, but he brought up his rifle and got off a shot of his own. The outlaw went down, a look of surprise frozen on his face. The remaining outlaw, seeing his companions fallen, wheeled his horse and galloped out of town. Joey reached Beau as he sank to one knee, clutching his left arm. "Just grazed me," he assured her through gritted teeth. "But we need to check on the sheriff." Sheriff Harrison had been hit in the leg but would recover. The outlaw Beau had shot in the shoulder was wounded but alive. The leader wasn't so fortunate. Beau's shot had caught him in the chest. As Doc Wilson tended to the wounded, Beau explained to Joey that the outlaws had likely followed Frank and Carl after they'd left Beau at the doctor's. They'd probably been watching the town, waiting for a chance to find the rest of the gold they believed Beau still possessed. "There never was any more gold, was there?" Joey asked as she helped clean and bandage Beau's arm. He shook his head. "Just that one nugget I gave you. And now everybody knows it." The events of that day changed something in the town's perception of Beau. No longer was he just the wanderer who'd finally returned. He was now the man who had helped defend their community. Even Sheriff Harrison, once recovered enough to speak, praised Beau's quick action. But the greatest change was in Joey herself. Watching Beau risk his life to protect the town to protect her had cleared away the last of her doubts. A week after the outlaw attack, as they walked along the creek that ran behind the Davidson property, Joey finally gave Beau her answer. "Yes," she said simply, stopping beneath the spreading branches of an old cottonwood tree. Beau looked at her in confusion. "Yes, I'll marry you." She touched the gold nugget hanging around her neck. "Yes, I'll start that farm with you." The joy that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. "You won't regret it, Joey, I swear to you." "I know," she said, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt the full weight of her hope not as a burden but as wings. They were married 2 weeks later in the small white church at the edge of town. Frank Harmon and Carl Winters delayed their departure to attend, and even Meredith Holcomb had to admit that Joey made a beautiful bride in a dress Lily had helped her remake from her mother's wedding gown. The Davidson property slowly transformed under their care. The dilapidated house became a home, the overgrown fields yielded to plow and seed, and a small herd of cattle grazed on the hillsides. It wasn't an easy life, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and hearts. On their first anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Beau presented Joey with a small wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, opening it to find a delicate silver locket inside. "Open it," he urged. Inside was the gold nugget she had worn around her neck for a year, now set against a background of blue enamel. "Your hope kept me alive when I thought I had nothing left," Beau said, taking her hand. "When I said your hope is my life, I meant it with everything I am." Joey closed her fingers around the locket, feeling its solid weight. "Some still call me foolish for having waited so long," she admitted. Beau smiled and placed his hand over hers, the calluses of farm work now replacing those of mining. "Let them. Hope isn't foolish when it's built on love. And ours has been tested by time and distance and even bullets." He leaned in to kiss her. "I'd say that makes it the wisest choice of all." As dusk deepened into night, they remained on the porch, talking of the future of the children they hoped for, of the years stretching ahead. And in the gentle Wyoming darkness, with the distant howl of coyotes echoing across the valley, Joey knew that her hope had never been foolish. It had been the truest compass of her heart, guiding her to exactly where she was meant to be. In the years that followed, the Matthews farm prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the county. Joey and Beau welcomed 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter who inherited their mother's steadfast heart and their father's adventurous spirit. And though life on the frontier remained challenging, bringing both triumphs and hardships, they faced each day together, their hope for the future as bright and enduring as gold.